It started the way most betrayals do, quietly, almost kindly, like a shadow stretching before sunset. Ethan Rivera noticed it in the smallest shift, the way Maya's laugh no longer waited for him to join in, the delayed answers, the subtle perfume that lingered, though she hadn't worn it in years. He didn't ask, he observed. At first it felt noble, giving her space. But that nobility soured the night her phone lit the dark kitchen and the name, Jonas Hale, glowed across the counter. In that dim light, Ethan understood something irreversible had begun. Yet he smiled, poured her wine, kissed her temple, and whispered, "You've been working late again." The lie between them breathed its first full breath. And in that breath, Ethan made his quiet promise. He would let her think he didn't know, until the day she'd see what knowing truly looked like. Mornings became performances. Ethan brewed coffee, set 2 cups like clockwork, and counted the seconds between her footsteps on the stairs. Maya smiled the same way she always did. Half asleep, lips brushed with routine affection. But her eyes betrayed distance, the kind that forms when someone rehearses another life. He memorized it. The rhythm of deceit, the scent of jasmine lotion, the faint hum of her phone on silent. When she left for meetings, Ethan opened a new document on his laptop, titled Blueprint. Revenge wasn't born of rage. It was crafted from precision. And as her car faded down the street, he whispered to the empty kitchen, "You'll walk into my plan like it's your dream." By afternoon, Ethan had driven past her favorite boutique and watched her reflection laughing beside Jonas in the glass. The betrayal wasn't cinematic. It was casual, domestic, effortless. That normalcy hurt most. In his rearview mirror, Ethan rehearsed silence. The revenge had to feel earned, almost elegant. He called Rita. "Remember when you said some people need lessons?" he asked. She answered, "You finally ready to teach?" And that was all it took. The conspiracy sealed in static between 2 voices that knew love had limits. That night, Rita came over with old photos and cheap whiskey, pretending it was nostalgia. "You sure about this?" she asked, scanning Ethan's sketch of a floor plan. "No," he said, "but I'm certain she deserves the truth." Beautifully delivered. The laughter between them came like static, a shared sin reborn as strategy. By midnight, the dining table had transformed into a war map. Venues, playlists, guest names, each note a wound disguised as a flourish. When Rita left, Ethan lingered at the window, city lights blinking like Morse code messages only he could read. "You've crossed the point of no return." Before dawn, Ethan stepped outside, air thick with mist and unspoken vows. The city was quiet. Like it too, held its breath. He remembered their wedding morning, Maya's trembling hands, his promise of forever, and realized forever can end politely if you plan it right. He looked toward the horizon, toward the place where he'd build his perfect revenge. Not a fight, not a scandal, but a stage. A wedding of his own design. The sun cracked open behind him, painting the world in pale gold, and Ethan whispered into the light, "Let's begin." Ethan didn't plan revenge like a villain. He planned it like an artist designing symmetry. Every detail had to be exquisite. The venue, the guest list, the illusion of love's rebirth. He told Maya he wanted to renew their vows, a symbolic gesture before a fresh start. Her face lit up in cautious wonder, guilt trembling beneath excitement. She agreed, not realizing she was agreeing to her own undoing. Ethan smiled softly, promising her a day she'd never forget. He meant it. In his mind, this would be her second wedding. One dressed in roses, vows, and reckoning. He began assembling his team. Rita for logistics, Samir for spectacle, Nina for documentation. Each ally brought a piece of theater to the plan. The story was shifting, from heartbreak to choreography. The next day, Ethan met Samir Patel, the wedding planner whose reputation for drama was legend. "You want elegance or spectacle?" Samir asked, flicking open a swatch book. "Both," Ethan said. "I want beauty so sharp it cuts." Samir paused, reading something dangerous in Ethan's tone, then smiled. "I can make it unforgettable." Ethan outlined the vision. A wedding by the sea. Guests dressed in white, a single screen behind the altar for a tribute. Samir didn't need to know what the tribute contained. He only needed to make sure the world would watch. That afternoon, contracts were signed, champagne poured, and destiny sealed between two people who understood the art of performance better than truth itself. Maya's friends were thrilled, or pretended to be. Grace gushed over the idea of a vow renewal, while secretly texting Jonas. The irony didn't escape Ethan. It thrilled him. He orchestrated every moment with precision. The guest list filled with those who had cheered their first wedding, and those who had whispered when it began to fall apart. Every RSVP was a pawn placed perfectly. Maya spent evenings scrolling through decor ideas, her guilt stitched under each smile. Ethan stood behind her once, watching her laugh at the floral arrangements, and whispered, "It'll be beautiful, I promise." Her laughter stilled for a beat, sensing something in his voice that didn't belong. Rita's apartment became their secret command center. Pinned on her wall was a sprawling map of connections. Maya, Jonas, Grace, every person tied to the lie. Rita asked, "What if she breaks before the wedding?" Ethan stared at the board. "Then she'll still show up," he said. "Guilt doesn't stop the guilty, it just makes them arrive early." They planned lighting cues, speech timings, camera placements. Each note on the board was a confession waiting to be filmed. The plan was more than revenge now. It was art. And like all great art, it needed suffering to mean something. Days later, Ethan stood in the empty venue, the scent of salt and new beginnings heavy in the air. The sea whispered below the cliff, as if conspiring with him. He imagined Maya walking down the aisle, radiant, unknowing, surrounded by guests, waiting for a celebration that would end in silence. He could almost hear the gasp when truth replaced vows. Yet beneath his anticipation, a shadow stirred, the question of who he'd become. He brushed it aside like sand off his shoes. The final piece was ready. Maya would have her wedding, and he would have his closure. Or something that looked like it. Ethan learned to play the part of the wounded man. He moved through his days with the softness of someone trying to heal, replying slowly to texts, speaking in half smiles. He let Maya think he was still hurting, that her mistakes had merely bruised him. It gave her comfort. And in that comfort, she grew careless. She started posting more, laughing louder, telling friends they were stronger than ever. Ethan's restraint became performance art. Behind each measured silence, a new step in his plan unfolded. Invitations finalized, vows drafted, the playlist curated to perfection. He rehearsed his lines in the mirror, the words he would speak before the world shattered around her. Sometimes he almost pitied her. Almost. In public, Ethan let vulnerability be his camouflage. At dinners, he smiled at Maya's friends and let them offer pity disguised as advice. Grace told him, "You're lucky she came back to you." He laughed softly. "I know." Inside, the words tasted metallic. Across the table, Maya intertwined her fingers with his, performing affection like a duet. Every glance she cast at Jonas across the restaurant was a silent note of guilt, and Ethan caught everyone. He didn't need to confront her anymore. The entire city would witness her confessions soon enough. Tonight, he just had to keep acting. And no one played sincerity better than a man who'd already buried his truth. The online world loved them. Again, Maya's feed filled with smiling selfies, poetic captions, healing journeys. Ethan scrolled through each one with surgical calm, noting the irony of the hashtags. #stronger tether, #second chances. He clicked like on every post. Each heart symbol was another quiet nod to the lie he was building. In the evenings, he would record voice memos, fragments of vows, lines layered with coded truth. To love someone enough to let them destroy you, he whispered into his phone, and still rebuild something they'll never recognize. It wasn't forgiveness. It was foreshadowing. And soon, the world would hear it in surround sound. Nina, the photographer, met him at dusk. She was nervous, her camera strap twisting between her fingers. "You really want me to film it?" she asked. "Everything," Ethan said. "Every vow, every face, every silence." She hesitated. "And Maya?" He looked out toward the horizon. "She'll get her spotlight." Nina's empathy wavered against her loyalty. But when she saw Ethan's eyes, clear, deliberate, she nodded. The deal was done. Her lens would capture beauty and ruin in equal measure. As she packed her gear, Ethan exhaled. Every player was in position now, and the curtain was rising soon. The night before the ceremony, Ethan walked through the venue alone. White roses lined the aisle, their scent almost intoxicating. He touched one, petals cool beneath his fingers. Tomorrow this place would bloom with applause, and then burn with revelation. The ocean murmured below, as if warning him. For a moment he felt something close to fear, not of failure, but of success. When you destroy someone beautifully, you also destroy the version of yourself that loved them. He straightened his tie, looked toward the altar, and whispered, "Showtime." Morning broke with the serenity of a lie dressed in silk. The venue buzzed with florists, stylists, and murmuring waves. Ethan greeted everyone like a gracious groom, his voice low, calm, deliberate. Maya floated through the room in white, radiant and unsuspecting, thanking Samir for his magic touch. Rita handled logistics with military precision, while Ethan moved among them all as conductor and ghost. The scent of sea salt mixed with roses, every breath felt rehearsed. Maya caught Ethan's hand once and whispered, "You really did all this for us." He smiled. "For us," he said, letting the word linger like an echo that meant everything but love. By noon, guests began to arrive. Family, friends, co-workers who loved drama more than sincerity. They gasped at the view, the opulence, the promise of romance reborn. Ethan moved through the crowd, shaking hands, exchanging practiced laughter. Each embrace felt like pressing play on a well-timed illusion. Across the courtyard, he saw Jonas slip in wearing a tailored suit, sunglasses hiding nerves. Grace greeted Maya with bright falseness. Her smile stretched thin. Beneath every polite word hummed the same unspoken question. Could love really return from ashes? Ethan already knew the answer, and he had prepared the proof. In the bridal suite, Maya adjusted her veil, heart fluttering with nostalgia and guilt. Nina entered quietly, camera in hand. "Ready for your close-up?" she asked, her tone neutral, but eyes uncertain. Maya laughed nervously, unaware that Nina's lens wasn't capturing love but evidence. Downstairs, Ethan rehearsed the sequence again. Vows, video cue, audio playback. The orchestration was flawless, every wire, every angle timed to the heartbeat of revelation. He checked his reflection one last time and whispered, "Perfect." The world outside shimmered with beauty, but within those walls, truth waited like a loaded gun behind lace. The ceremony began at sunset. Guests rose as Maya walked the aisle, her smile trembling between joy and uncertainty. Ethan stood beneath the glass altar, eyes fixed on her, like a man watching the inevitable. Pastor Harold's voice floated above the surf, solemn and poetic. Every vow spoken was a lie carefully balanced on sincerity's edge. As Maya reached him, Ethan took her hands, steady, warm, rehearsed, and said softly, "You have no idea how long I've waited for this." Applause followed, thunderous, blind. Somewhere deep in the sound system, a hidden file waited, its timer counting down toward revelation. As the first stars appeared, champagne poured and music swelled. Maya danced with guests, laughter bright, cheeks flushed. Ethan watched her from a distance, his glass untouched. Rita approached quietly, whispering, "Everything's set." He nodded. Nina gave a subtle signal from across the dance floor. Samir dimmed the lights on cue, the projection screen flickering to life behind the altar. Maya turned, confused, as her own voice echoed through hidden speakers. Laughter, messages, whispers she thought were private. The crowd began to still. Ethan set his glass down, eyes locked on her silhouette, and murmured, "Curtain up." The screen flickered once, then steadied. At first, guests thought it was part of the ceremony, a montage, perhaps. Then Maya's laughter filled the air, soft and unmistakably intimate. The audio rolled. Whispered confessions, Jonas' voice calling her "my forever." The crowd shifted, laughter fading into silence. Maya froze, bouquet trembling in her hand. Ethan didn't move. He stood in perfect stillness, watching her expression crumble. Rita lowered her eyes. Nina couldn't bring herself to film. Samir's fingers hovered above the lighting board. The footage continued. Phone calls, photographs, messages. The truth spilled out, elegant and merciless. Ethan finally stepped forward, his voice low, calm. "Now, you know what I knew." Maya's lips parted, but no sound came out. The world had collapsed into the echo of her own laughter, betraying her. Guests whispered, 100 tiny knives of judgment. Jonas stood frozen near the back, color drained, realizing the trap was complete. Ethan turned to the officiant, voice steady. "Pastor, would you mind reading the vows?" Harold hesitated, eyes darting between them. "These aren't vows," he murmured. "They're confessions." Ethan smiled faintly. "Exactly." Maya shook her head, tears cutting through her makeup. "Ethan, please," she whispered. But he had no reply left. He simply gestured toward the screen, letting silence pronounce the verdict. When the final clip ended, Ethan took the microphone. His voice was soft, intimate, the tone of a man delivering eulogies, not accusations. "I wanted everyone to see," he said, "that love can die beautifully, if you let it." His words fell like glass on marble. Maya dropped her bouquet, petals scattering across the floor like apologies too late. "You planned this?" she breathed. "From the start?" Ethan nodded once. "From the night your phone lit up." The crowd murmured. Some pitied him. Others pitied her. Jonas slipped out the side door unnoticed. Ethan didn't look at him. He looked only at Maya, the woman who taught him how to lie gracefully. Security didn't need to intervene. No one dared move. Maya sank onto a chair, shaking. "You couldn't have just left me," she whispered. "You didn't have to destroy me." Ethan set the microphone down gently, his voice barely audible. "You already did that. I just gave it lighting." Rita stood in the corner, eyes wet, realizing how far they'd gone. Nina finally raised her camera again, not out of loyalty, but instinct, capturing the moment truth turned from justice to cruelty. As the last applause track faded from the speakers, a cruel glitch of irony, Ethan walked past the stunned crowd and into the night, leaving silence heavy as the sea. Outside, the wind tore through the cliffside, carrying fragments of applause, of vows, of everything love once meant. Ethan leaned on the railing, the sea below roaring like an audience that refused to end. He thought of how meticulously he had built this, every detail precise, every emotion rehearsed, and still, victory felt hollow. Rita joined him quietly, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "You did it," she said. He nodded, eyes on the horizon. "No," he murmured. "I finished it." Behind them, the venue glowed like a cathedral of ghosts. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel powerful. He just felt empty. The quiet aftermath of a perfect performance. The morning after felt unreal. The kind of silence that comes after an explosion, when the air still hums with what used to exist. News traveled faster than the tide. Clips from the wedding leaked online. Hashtags bloomed like wildfire. Hash their revenge rooting. Hash vows of vengeance. Ethan didn't check his phone. He sat in the kitchen, coffee untouched, wedding band beside it. The victory that had once tasted sharp now lay heavy and metallic. Maya had vanished into her sister's house. He imagined her replaying the footage, every second dissecting what she once thought was love. Outside, the sky was gray, the kind of weather that refuses to choose between rain and regret. Rita arrived unannounced, her face drawn, her usual confidence muted. "You've seen the news?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "They're calling it art," he said flatly. She sat across from him, folding her hands. "You should feel something about that." He gave a dry smile. "I do, just not pride." She told him Maya had been staying with Grace, refusing calls, avoiding light. "You broke her," Rita said. Ethan shook his head slowly. "No, I just held up a mirror." The silence that followed was worse than any argument. When Rita left, she didn't look back. For the first time, Ethan realized revenge had cost him the only people who ever stayed. Across town, Maya watched the footage again, frame by frame, searching for a moment, any moment, where Ethan might have hesitated. There wasn't one. Every smile had been deliberate, every word sharpened. Grace hovered near her, unsure what comfort even meant. "He planned it all," Maya whispered. "Even the colors, even the music." Her voice broke. "He loved me enough to choreograph my ruin." Grace tried to take her hand, but Maya pulled away. "Don't," she said softly. "I can still hear the applause." Outside the window, the ocean stretched endless and cruel, the same sea that had blessed their vows and witnessed their end. Nina uploaded the final files that morning and deleted everything from her hard drive. She couldn't bear to hold evidence of what beauty could do and twist it. Her studio smelled of chemicals and regret. Samir called, his voice shaking. "People are booking me because of that video," he said. "They want drama," Nina answered quietly. "Then they didn't understand the story." She turned off the monitor, the screen going black, her reflection merging with the emptiness. The camera, the one that captured it all, sat on the table, still smudged with tears she never admitted were hers. That night, Ethan walked along the shore beneath a bruised sky. The surf roared like static, endless and accusing. Every wave sounded like her name. He had imagined freedom would feel clean, like exhaling. Instead, it was heavy, metallic, lingering in his throat. He wondered if Maya had cried, or if she'd simply gone quiet, as he once did. Above him, the stars hid behind low clouds, and for the first time he couldn't tell whether he'd won or lost. Revenge had ended the story, but it hadn't ended the ache. The sea, the same sea that had framed his vengeance, now whispered the only truth left: that some victories destroy the victor. Weeks passed. The world moved on, but the silence between Ethan and Maya stayed alive. An invisible thread binding two people who'd destroyed each other too beautifully to forget. The viral storm faded. New scandals took its place. Ethan returned to work, pretending to live. Yet everything around him felt hollow. Coffee without taste, sunlight without warmth. He no longer checked the trending pages or answered Rita's calls. One night, while sorting through drawers, he found the notepad where the revenge had been born. In the corner of the first page, a single word stared back at him: "Forgive." It wasn't her handwriting. It was his, written months before when he still believed that love could survive the truth. Maya eventually sent a letter. No apology, no anger, just honesty stripped of ornament. "You wanted everyone to see me," it began. "But I hope one day you see yourself." Ethan read it in silence, tracing the handwriting he knew better than his own. She wrote of the weight of shame, of her sleepless nights, of how she now understood pain as clarity. There was no forgiveness in her words, only truth. The kind that no longer needed revenge to exist. When he finished reading, Ethan folded the letter neatly and placed it inside his jacket pocket. For the first time in months, his chest ached in a way that felt human. Rita met him for coffee on a quiet afternoon. The cafe smelled of rain and roasted beans. She watched him stir sugar into his cup without drinking. She said gently. "What now?" Ethan shrugged. "Maybe I stopped trying to win." She smiled faintly. "That would be new for you." They sat in silence, the kind that doesn't hurt anymore. Before leaving, Rita reached across the table and squeezed his hand. No words, just a shared understanding between two survivors of the same fire. As she walked away, Ethan realized some endings aren't meant to be rewritten, only understood. That evening, Ethan drove to the cliff where the wedding had been. The venue stood empty now, stripped of flowers and vows, only the echo of waves filling the space. He stepped onto the glass altar, the same spot where he'd once exposed a lie and lost himself with it. Pulling the letter from his pocket, he read it once more, then folded it neatly and tucked it beneath a loose stone. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. He whispered to the sea, "We both did what we had to." The wind answered in soft murmurs, carrying his words away, erasing them like footprints on wet sand. At dawn, Ethan returned home and stood before the drawer where his wedding ring had slept. He opened it and stared at the small band, its shine dulled with time. Instead of putting it on, he placed it inside an envelope with no address and sealed it shut. There were no speeches left, no justice to prove, only quiet. Only the weight of having loved and destroyed in equal measure. As the morning light spilled through the curtains, Ethan whispered to the empty room, "This is the last lie I'll keep." And for the first time in years, the silence that followed didn't hurt, it healed.